Hi Tara, how are you? Today we're going to make those really awesome candle holders. And what you will need for that will be clay, obviously. Woo! You will need, here I am. You'll need something to cut with, metal rib. I have a scratchy tool that I use to slip and score. But if you don't have this, then just your needle tool will work. This will work in place of that if you don't have this nice little mini rake scratchy tool. And if you have a candle that you know you want to use for these, you can use that as your measure. I don't have a candle, so I'm just going to use a tool handle and we'll go from there. You will also need something small and round. However big you want to make these, just find something small and round. It could be a lid. This is actually a GR form. It's a pottery form for making plates. So this, you might actually benefit from purchasing one of these since you're interested in kind of little dishes. They're cheap and they're awesome. So something small and round for your to trace around, and then I think that might be all you need, but we'll figure it out as we go. So I will turn the camera down now. And here we are. I always work on a piece of canvas. So I'm just going to open this up. Wire off a chunk. Wrap this back up so it doesn't dry out. And now we're just going to start to pound this out. Now keep in mind, whatever you use for your template, it's going to shrink about 13% with our clay. So keep in mind that it will turn out slightly smaller. And you can start to measure. So I'm good here. So now you really want this about 1/4 inch thick. And to tell where you're at, just cut a piece off and have a look. You could even measure it. So this is about 1/4 inch. And when I'm pounding this out, I'm pounding in the center. And I kind of avoid the edges because those will naturally start to get thin. And we don't want it to be too thin on the edge. Okay. So now we're going to roll it out. Forgot to mention a roller in the beginning. Now we're just going to try to flatten out where we made marks. We're going to flip it over and do the other side. And if you get little air bubbles, just pop them. And then we're going to use the metal rib to smooth this out. I used the rounded edge. And look at, if you can see the angle here, it's not like this. We're kind of at a 45-degree angle. Get rid of this clay that bunches up. Okay, now we will flip this over and do the other side. Okay. Now I'm going to cut. So I like to just use this knife. And really what I honestly like to use is an X-Acto knife. These are really nice to use. But what I do before I use it, if you buy a brand new one, you're just gonna wanna scratch it up on the floor so that it's not so sharp. So like this, maybe you can see me. Can you see? I don't know if you can see. I'm gonna just bring you down here. So, just kind of go like that. Dull it a little bit. Because these things are so sharp. So, an X-Acto knife is actually probably my favorite tool. So there you go. Okay, back here. Okay. So I'm just going to cut this out. Okay, to get this extra clay off, I just cut and peel away. Now hang on to this, we're going to use it here in a minute. Okay, there's our circle. Now I'm just running my finger along this edge just because it was so harsh and sharp. Now that I think about it, we probably don't even need to do that, because next we're going to roll out a coil. So just grab a hunk of clay and we're going to start to roll. And I might need to set this aside so I can roll out a big enough coil. This is a coil that we're going to use to make the actual candle holder and what we're going to attach around the rim of the circle we just cut out so that we can get that raised lip on the edges like you wanted. So I just start from the middle and make my way out. Maybe go to one hand and then just start to check your coil to see if we're starting to get big enough. So this almost comes all the way around. I need to go a little more. This side is thicker, so I think I'm going to try to thin this all out. Try to get it as symmetrical as possible. But it doesn't have to be perfect. And I think for your aesthetic, you might enjoy if it's not perfect. So now we're going to measure again. I'm just lining the edge of this up, right up with the edge of the circle. Okay, so I have enough. So here's how I'm actually going to cut this. So I'm gonna move this so you can see really well what I'm doing. So overlap it like that, and then cut at an angle. I'm not cutting straight down, I'm cutting at an angle. So see here. And I always like to cut through a little bit, about an inch of the bottom off, because my ends are always thicker. So I like to just slice through that way. So this comes off, this comes out, and now we've got a nice angle, which is really nice for connections. And we're going to begin to prepare to connect this. So I'm going to take that off. Now here comes in the scratchy tool, nice little rake. If you don't have that, a needle tool works just fine. So we're just going to start slipping and scoring all the way around here. So this tool is really nice to quickly slip and score. So we're just roughing up this clay so that it can attach really nicely to our coil. I'm going to do the same thing to the coil. I'm just going to scratch, scratch, scratch. And since this clay is fresh out of the bag, sometimes you can get away with not having to slip and score. But if you are working on a piece, wouldn't you want to make sure it sticks together? So I'm going to go this way, I'm going to go this way, and then for our slip, what I have here is just my watered down clay. This is a blender, I just keep it in here. You might not need it because I'm not sure how much slipping and scoring you're going to be doing. You could also just use water. This is kind of like clay glue. I'm just using a brush. Paint this on, a little bit on both. Now you might notice that as you apply the slip or the water that it just fills in all that scratchiness you just did. So you might actually have to go back and do a little more. score, slip, score. Okay, now we're going to try to attach this. And once you get to the edge, once you get here, just push them together. Okay. My coil had some little divots in it, so I'm just smoothing that out. I'm gonna close this seam where my two ends met. And now I'm going to start just attaching this. So you can either push the clay up, this clay up from the bottom, or you can push the clay from the coil down. You might do both. I think I'm liking pushing the coil down into the circle. Feels pretty good. Okay. So just whatever way feels comfortable to get this attached, whatever you gotta do. You can almost get away with just going around it like this. Seems to be attaching it pretty nicely, but that might be what you do after, because I'm still not getting a nice connection. So I'm just bringing the clay down, going over that seam. Okay, and now we'll connect at the inside. So I'm supporting with my left hand on the outside. I'm just trying to push this clay down. I'm kind of pulling across and then smoothing down. And you know what's nice to use sometimes is a spinny board. So they make these, they call them, let me talk. Hey. Okay, so these, they sell ceramic ones of these. They're called banding wheels, and they're heavy duty industrial like metal. But these like cake stand plastic ones are like 10 bucks. So go this route. But it's just really nice because you don't have to move around the clay, and you don't have to pick your piece up. You can just spin. Okay, so I've pushed all this clay down. Now I need to just clean it up a little. So I'm just gonna run my finger along the side, along where the connection is. I can kind of just use my thumb, almost like the edge here where my nail and my skin meet. I'll never forget one time in undergrad, I asked my teacher, well, what tool should I use to do this? Talking about a specific technique. And she said, use your fingers are tools too. And I was like, okay, so anytime I'm using my fingers, I always think of that. Your fingers are tools too. So, I like this angle. You can see what I'm doing and you can see my face. So I'm just cleaning this all up now. Now I think we're to the point to where we can really refine it. So I'm going to get a sponge that's barely damp. Okay, a little bit of water. Clean it up a little. I kind of like to do this taco thing for my rim. And I'm using maybe medium pressure. Just go all the way around. We don't want to dump a bunch of water on this. We don't want it to get flimsy. Okay, and the outside. And pay special attention to the bottom. So right now I'm focusing on the bottom right here. I'm using the sponge, but I'm trying to push directly on the bottom. Okay. Clean this up some more, and this is looking good. So what you can do if you want this to be a little bit taller, you can just pinch this and see, you can already see just from the pinch, I'm trying to see if you can see that. See how just the pinch kind of raises it up? And I can also thin this out, which might be a good idea so this isn't really heavy. And this is kind of an opportunity to kind of play with this. You could almost get a design out of it from your finger marks if you're a little bit careful about it. And just overlap your pinches. Might look nice. Or you might want it smoothed out. So you can pinch this up and then maybe you could smooth it out again. It's up to you. You could even find something to make marks in this, like, I don't know, even just the bottom of this tool can make a pattern. You might enjoy making some of your own stamps. Leaves are a really neat thing to do. If you wanted to do like a leaf impression or a lace impression, you would do that after you cut your initial circle, before you add this on. And you just roll whatever you want into it. But now that I think about that, since we have to do so much smoothing, you maybe really want to add your texture second and not before. Okay, so now I have this nice little coil to make, and it's dried out a little. Need to get some more moisture on it. Okay, so for the actual candle holder, so if I were using this as my guide, I would just make sure it was a little bit bigger, because this is going to shrink. So use your candle to measure, but just make sure there's plenty of room. And I think one thing we can do once this is like completed, if your candlestick doesn't fit in, I think what people do is they melt a little bit of the candle at the bottom, and then they can stick it in there. So I'm just going to do the same thing here. The way we cut this, overlap it a little, and then come in at an angle. Take the ends off. Now you've got like a little donut. Yum, I'm hungry. Okay. Just blend it together. Now that's going to go right there. So I'm just gonna flatten this a little, and you could have done this when we did this big, just so I can have a nice area to slip and score. And to measure, you can just use this, give it a little tap, and now you can see right where you need to slip and score. And I like to give it a little push down, a little wiggle. You can even kind of go back and forth, really get those clay particles stuck. And then the same thing. So this could be fun to play with. Maybe you want to just leave it looking like a donut. And in that case, you might just clean up the connection point with a paintbrush. Maybe you want to come in on the inside and clean it up. And you can test it. So I might make mine come in a little bit more. Or you know what might be a good idea is to make a little indentation in the very center. And then that might be able to stand up straight. You might, if it's too long, if it's too wide, you can kind of push it in. Or even kind of put your thumb in and pull your finger towards the center. So this project really lends itself to personal touches. You can really do so many personalized things, like how you want to do the rim, if you want any decoration. So now I'm going to come back in with this paintbrush and just reattach. So I got a little off moving it around. I kind of like that I did this pinch looking thing here because it kind of mimics this outside. And anywhere where you can recreate something somewhere else on the piece really like brings it together as a whole. You might use a little water to clean it up. And once these stiffen up for about an hour, it's easier to come back in and do some really good refining. So I think this looks really cool. So again, maybe just leave like 1/8 of an inch all around, and that might be good to almost, the clay might shrink just perfectly to your candle. So you might have to play with this. You might have to make several and take notes and write down exactly how much room you left around your candle, and just take notes of your measurements and what you did, and see how the first few come out, and then you can make adjustments if the hole turned out to be too big or too small. Maybe there's like a little bit of maybe like museum putty you could put at the bottom if your hole turned out to be too big and you wanted your candle to still stand up. I think museum putty, that tacky stuff, might be good. Or like I said earlier, I think some people might melt a little wax at the bottom and then stick their candle into that. So this is really neat. I had fun doing this, and you know what I'm thinking now, what might be kind of neat? I can't stop sometimes, but this is just something I always like to think about. I always like to think about decorative handles. So how cute would this be with a little handle there and a little handle on the other side? Maybe that one's too big. So how cute would that be? Have a couple little handles. That's kind of cute, right? Okay, so, and then just let this dry. I should have done this on the canvas because now this is stuck to my plastic board. So I'm going to have to let this dry. And make sure you're signing your pieces. Maybe you don't sign the earrings, but you can sign this. Just wait till it's stiffened up to what we call leather hard. Leather hard is where it won't wiggle, but you could still easily make marks into it. Okay, so I got that off there. And if you wanted to do little handles, you would just, slip and score where they connect. But how cute is that? And you will need to sign the bottom once it's stiffened up, like I was saying. Once it's stiffened up, and you can pick it up without it losing its shape. And that's when you're at leather hard. When you can kind of push on the rim and it doesn't move, that's leather hard. That's the best state of dryness where you can sign or carve decoration. So here we go. All right. Well, I hope you liked this video, and I think I want to show you around my studio. Just for fun, let's see what we've got here. Here's my kiln. I am getting ready to fire. I'm going to fill that up all the way to the top. What else have we here? See if I can see what I'm doing. This is just where I keep all of my tools. Lots of tools, lots of books. I was trying to look through my books to see if I could find a book to recommend for you. It's kind of dark here. You can see me better here. I was going to try to find a book to recommend for you, but I found that most of my books were about wheel throwing. I almost recommended this one, the Potter's Studio Handbook, because it goes through some really nice information. And since you are so interested in all the different steps, you might find a book that could really teach you. So this one talks about tools and equipment, types of clay, shrinking and drying and recycling your clay, hand building, decorative and finishing techniques, kilns, how to fire, hand building projects. So you might start finding some books to help guide you through your clay projects, because I can tell that you're going to stick with clay for a while, so we want you set up for success. So this is just my studio. Yeah, these are little Oklahoma magnets I made. I live in Oklahoma, so those are really popular. Here's where I work when I'm making your videos. So here's the wheel. Here's a bunch of mugs I just got done making, and all this work over here is student work. So I do a lot of like date night classes, and I actually just got finished up with a date night class, and they were on the wheel, and this was their first time, and that's how they turned out. So, and look at these cute jars from one of my students. So, and that's where my 3-year-old hangs out when I have to work in the studio. So I just thought it'd be fun if I showed you where I work, since you're in a whole nother state. And I really enjoy, there we go. I really enjoy talking with you and answering your questions. I love how excited you are. And anyway, I hope you enjoy the video. Let me know how it goes, and I'll see you later. Bye.